Hello and welcome. Today we are going to be looking at how the Republicans attempted to deal with the Great Depression. Last lesson you looked at what the Wall Street crash was and the ensuing Great Depression and the impact on people's lives, and today we're going to look at how the government tried to deal with it at first. So the first thing I would like you to do today is to answer the do now questions. So pause here, answer the questions, and then come back and we will go through the answers. Okay, so hopefully you have some answers to the questions. What you are going to do is tick these if you got them correct, change them if you got them wrong, and add them if you didn't have them. So the Wall Street crash was in October of 1929. If you've got anything more specific, then excellent, but it should definitely be October 1929. So question number 2, what were Hoovervilles? Hoovervilles were shanty towns that built up on the edge of towns and cities during the Great Depression. They were made of tin, wood, and cardboard, and it was a sarcastic name as people blamed President Hoover for their existence. So anything to do with the fact that they were shanty towns, that they were on the edges of towns and cities, made of wood and cardboard, and that they reflected the blame of President Hoover. So if you don't have all of that detail, can you add it please? And obviously tick it if you got it correct. Finally, question number 3, why were the bonus marchers annoyed? And the bonus marchers were annoyed because they had been promised a bonus for fighting in the war, but the government had refused to pay them. So they marched on Washington, and it all ended up with the army being called in to disperse the bonus marchers, and the Hooverville that they were living in was burned to the ground. So make sure you've got those answers and then be ready to move on to the next task. So to understand our main question today, which is how did the Republicans deal with the Great Depression, we need to understand the difference between Republicans and Democrats. Now, American politics is largely split into two sides. There are other political parties, but the big fight really is between Republicans and Democrats. So Republicans are right-leaning. Trump is a Republican. They tend to have very conservative policies, largely tend to be more religious, often anti-abortion, things like that. They favour less taxes and more big businesses, and in contrast, Democrats tend to be left-leaning. They tend to have quite liberal policies, much more focus on civil rights. There tends to be a lot more public spending, so taxes are higher under a democratic government, but that goes into more public spending. So you'll find that they have things like buses, they might have more welfare products for people, and there's also higher workers' rights under a democratic government. These are the symbols or logos of the two parties. So the Republicans have an elephant and the Democrats have a donkey. There is a very long history behind that, and if you want to look it up, please feel free, but just know that that's what they are. If you'd like to challenge yourself at this point, you can consider why a Republican presidency might be worse for people during an economic depression, particularly workers. Okay, so some keywords that we need to know to be able to understand the decisions that Hoover made at the beginning of the Great Depression are the ones here. I would like you, please, at this stage to pause and write down the definitions. So a laissez-faire government is the idea that people should help themselves rather than being helped by the state. So that means no welfare programs, no benefits, anything like that. Similarly, rugged individualism is an American ideal which states that individuals are responsible for their own lives without help from anyone else, particularly the government. Make sure that you have those key words written down, please. So we need to have a think about what Hoover's attitude was towards the Great Depression. What you have here are statements that were made by Hoover at different points during the years 1929 to 1932. And they represent the Republican Party ideas as well. So he said that economic wounds must be healed by the producers and consumers themselves. So these are the people that do things and the general everyday people. He said a voluntary deed is infinitely more precious to our national ideal and spirit than 1,000 deeds instructed by the government. He said each industry should assist its own employees. And he also said that each community and state should assume full responsibility for the organisation of employment and the relief of distress. Now this is important, particularly here, because he's not saying that the government should do that the federal government. This is saying that actually it's not a whole countrywide thing and that it should be dealt with by each individual state. So in the same way as each individual state has different laws about when you can drink or when you can drive, they should also be dealing with the issue of employment and improvements under the Great Depression themselves. So, what I would like you to do, please, is to have a think about those statements and to answer the questions here. What do those statements suggest about Hoover's policies towards the Depression, and what did he expect the people of America to do? So pause here, answer those questions. You can have a go at the challenge if you like, and then come back for your final task. Okay. So I would like you now, please, to have a look at what Hoover did to begin with. So he did try and make some attempts to move America towards recovery. He didn't just sit and do nothing, but he did try and remain true to the Republican ideals. So on your Show My Homework, you have an information sheet attached about Hoover's early policies, and I would like you to read through that and answer the questions here in full sentences. So you will need full detail and make sure that you are answering in full sentences for these questions. So what did Hoover ask of business leaders? How did he try to support farmers? And what policies did Hoover put in place to help the unemployed? Answer those questions, then come back for us to complete the lesson. So our final task today is a bit of exam practice. It's not a difficult question today at all, and it is a 5-marker. You've seen these before, the describe questions, so it should be super easy for you to do. It's basically a summary, and your question today is describe Hoover's early policies towards the Depression. So to answer this question, you need to give 3 to 5 key points. You need to give full sentences, so these are not bullet point answers, and you need to spend about 5 minutes on this question. So a very quick summary of what Hoover's early policies were towards the Great Depression. I would suggest in your answer here that you are using words like laissez-faire, rugged individualism, and making sure as well that you talk about the kinds of things that he did. So maybe give some examples of him increasing import duties on foreign goods, setting up relief agencies, that kind of thing. That would probably give you your 5 marks there. So once you've completed your work today, you need to upload it to Show My Homework or email it to your teacher, and then wait for some feedback. Thank you.